We have a lot of new information to discuss today, including the latest on contract negotiations between Matthew Tkachuk and the Calgary Flames, Charlie McAvoy and the Boston Bruins, plus was Patrick Marleau's wish to go back to San Jose maybe not going to be realized, and also with Rasmus Ristolainen in the Sabres, does he actually want out of Buffalo? There's been lots of speculation about his future with the team, and maybe he's requested a trade after all. We'll get into all the latest talk coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of new news to discuss here today, a lot of updates on a lot of pending situations that we're kind of waiting to see what happens here around the NHL. I want to jump in first and get started with the situation in Calgary. Obviously, they have a major salary cap crunch going on. They got a big-time RFA, Matthew Tkachuk, and negotiations really haven't made a lot of progress, as is the case with many RFAs around the league. So that part alone shouldn't be too alarming. But based on some latest information coming out of Eric Francis in a recent interview with Sportsnet 960, indicates that really Matthew Tkachuk and the Calgary Flames don't really appear to be all that close at all on a contract, and right now he believes they're not even really talking at all. Now, of course, the Flames are trying to make some moves to free up additional cap space to be able to get him signed, as well as Andrew Mangiapane. It's believed as well that they're really trying hard to trade defenseman TJ Brodie, but have been unsuccessful. Now, in this interview, he did indicate that he believes Travis Hamonic would not be a name to be moved. We discussed likely between those two guys on the blue line, at least one of them going to kind of change things up, free up some space, etc. But he believes Hamonic's not going anywhere, and that Brodie is definitely the preferred target to trade, that the Flames are just having a difficult time doing it, and that they might have to package him with something else instead of trading him on his own. For example, with Mark Jankowski, who would have been packaged together and gone to the Maple Leafs had that trade not been nixed by Maple Leafs center, at least at the time, Nazem Kadri, of course, who had a no-move clause and decided to turn that trade down. But that was the package going to the Leafs in that deal. Obviously, I think the Leafs ended up getting a better deal anyways, longer term out of the Avalanche from that Tyson Barrie deal. But anyways, with the Calgary Flames, they're just having a hard time getting him traded, which obviously is, stalling things on the contract negotiations front. Now, as far as terms being discussed, he believes that it's a 2, a 5, and a 7-year term that the Flames are offering, and that ultimately they would probably prefer a 2-year bridge deal, which would certainly help keep the average annual value down a little bit, allow him to continue to grow, and then sign him hopefully to something much longer term and more valuable at that point in time. Now, from Tkachuk's standpoint, it very well could prove to be a good move as well. Obviously, a lot of these RFAs are going shorter term and trying to cash in as many times as they can and become unrestricted free agents as early as possible in the same process as well. But considering the fact that he said that they're not even talking at this point, and both he and the host of Sportsnet 960 both indicated they would not be surprised if they go into training camp and Matthew Tkachuk is not present as he does not have a contract, and they also said it would not be shocking if he ended up missing the first part of the regular season. Now, of course, like we saw last year with Nylander and the Leafs, if it drags on into the season, then his first year is going to be prorated at a higher AAV because of the shorter time he'd be playing, which would impact their situation with the cap even worse. So it is imperative that they get something done here and get him in their lineup. He proved to be such a big part of that team and so valuable that if they start the year without him, it's going to hurt the team quite a bit, and it's also going to hurt him as well, as we've seen players that typically don't have a great first season once they get started after having sat out a bunch of time and missing camp, etc. I mean, the Flames went through a similar scenario a few years ago with Johnny Gaudreau, who ultimately signed very early on, but still went into the first part of training camp and things before things really got underway. So ultimately, we'll see what happens in Calgary, but they're trying to trade Brodie to make the cap space necessary. Might be moving Jankowski as well. The two sides aren't talking, which isn't good. With training camp only a matter of weeks away now, hopefully we'll see some movement, but it is quite likely and possible, unfortunately, in Calgary that Tkachuk may not be present when training camp opens. Now, jumping over to look at the other RFA I want to discuss in this video, and that's defenseman with the Boston Bruins, Charlie McAvoy. Now, of course, those negotiations, like many other guys, including Tkachuk and others, haven't really had a lot of progress to discuss publicly, so it is believed that they're also having a hard time coming to terms. And like many of the RFAs as well, I just think they're kind of waiting for somebody to go first and set the market, and they don't want to be the ones to do it in case they accept a deal from their team that might be, end up being lower and maybe might lose money over the process here. Obviously, they'd like to see a nice rich contract go first, set the tone, which could in fact help everybody make more money, but I guess we will see. But we've seen some recent comments from President of the Bruins, Cam Neely, in an interview with Joe Haggerty that I found interesting that I wanted to share with you here today and kind of give you my thoughts on where I think negotiations are going based on these remarks. Now, on August the 1st, Bruins team president Cam Neely dropped some interesting news in a one-on-one interview with Joe Haggerty of NBC Sports Boston. He said, "Look at a player that's had some health issues 2 years in a row at a young age." Neely pointed out to Haggerty about McAvoy. "You look at that and say, okay, is that going to be the same or is it just bad luck? We can all see Charlie is capable of doing. You'd like to see a bigger sample size, obviously. Since the cap has come into effect, we've all seen deals that have been signed where 3 years down the road, you say it's not as good as you anticipated it would be." One NHL agent who wished to remain anonymous believes that Neely and the team started to go into a spin mode in an effort to ease the public relations hit the team surely will take if the Bruins insist on and end up signing McAvoy to a bridge deal. "I'm pretty sure that's the first time Neely or anyone from the team has publicly cited his injury past, and usually when that starts, the team is going for less money in our term," the agent told Boston Hockey Now. Considering he specifically cites term there, that would tell me that they're having cap issues. They're now aiming for a short-term, I'm thinking, bridge contract. "We do have to plan and prepare for these players not to be at camp on opening day," Neely said of McAvoy and fellow RFA blue liner Brandon Carlo. "But we have 5-6 weeks hopefully to get something done. We feel like we should be able to get something done with both these young guys at numbers that make sense for us and hopefully make sense for them. We've done a really good job of kind of managing the cap and making sure we're okay to get the guys done." 3 days later, as reported by our own Alex Thomas, the Bruins offered UFA defenseman Alex Petrovic a professional tryout, which to this point he has yet to accept. However, it's clear that the Bruins are preparing themselves if the impasses with McAvoy and Carlo continue into camp, and if the last week is any indication, they're eyeing a bridge deal contract with McAvoy. So obviously when they start seeing the team officials come out and speaking about players a little bit more than they were before, and when they're citing some things like injury concerns and that, obviously that does go to show that they have concerns about inking him longer term. And as he's referenced there, like for example, the Davis Backes contract is a great example with the Bruins signing a longer term contract and regretting it probably not long after because things have not worked out. Now, different scenario there. He was an older UFA, where McAvoy was a younger RFA, but still, when you see players going through a lot of injuries, that can derail a player's career and certainly significantly impact their value and what they can bring to the team and whatnot. And they obviously seem to have some concerns here about the inking McAvoy long term. And like he said, they very well might be kind of starting to put information out there to the public so they can kind of expect a bridge contract and hopefully not have Bruins fans too upset about that, because I know McAvoy is a very popular player amongst Bruins fans and he does show a lot of talent, but obviously his health concerns over the last couple of years are certainly something to keep in mind and be considered during this contract negotiation. So it does look as though the Bruins are really aiming as well, like we just talked about in Calgary, likely doing a short-term bridge contract with Charlie McAvoy. As we know, unrestricted free agent veteran forward Patrick Marleau was hoping to return to the San Jose Sharks. That's been discussed really for quite some time now. Obviously, when he was still a member of the Maple Leafs, it seemed to be pretty much an impossible task because of his cap hit being over $6 million. There was just no way the Sharks could do that, so a trade from Toronto to San Jose seemed impossible. But as we've seen, the Maple Leafs found a way to shed themselves of the contract by trading him to Carolina, and of course the Hurricanes ended up buying him out once he made it abundantly clear he had no interest in playing there. So now he's an unrestricted free agent, and many have suspected that he likely would return to the Sharks on a short-term, probably 1 year cheap contract at $1 million or less, which very well still might be possible. But according to Steve Simmons of the Toronto Sun, he says that he believes that the Sharks are not interested and don't want him, but he does believe that the Arizona Coyotes have interest, but isn't sure if Marleau would have the interest in going to play there. I found the Steve Simmons article a little bit interesting in regards to Marleau to talk to the Sharks that want him. I don't really know if that's really the case or not. Obviously at this point, considering they technically have cap space and Thornton and Marleau remain unsigned, does seem a little bit odd to me. Obviously, I understand the RFA market is still not settled and many of them are kind of waiting for things to go first. But when it comes to guys like Thornton and Marleau that are veterans, you know that they're likely going to be taking 1 year deals, fairly cheap money. They have over $4 million in space to get both these contracts done if they wanted to bring both the veterans back into the fold. And for the most part, there's been a lot of belief that they would, especially Thornton. Marleau was a little bit more questionable. But it is does seem a little weird that we're this deep into the offseason and they don't have any kind of contracts in place with either veteran. So could Steve Simmons be onto something here that the Sharks are not interested? And I guess I'd love to hear from you as well. If you're a Sharks fan, especially, do you think they should bring him back, or do they bring Thornton and Marleau both back? What should they do here? And do you think it is possible that they may not be interested because they clearly have the space to get it done, but yet it remains unresolved? And maybe he won't actually get his dream to return back to San Jose and will either end up playing in Arizona or maybe even call it a career. Who knows? Hard to say. But let me know what you think about the Marleau situation down in the comments. Lastly here, I want to talk about the Buffalo Sabres and Rasmus Ristolainen. Now, we've talked about the Sabres quite a bit this offseason and moves they might make. A lot of that talk has been around the possibility of them trading defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen. We've seen times when it seemed likely that he would be traded and other information to suggest that maybe they won't. There's been times that the cap situation obviously has fluctuated a little bit over the summer with other moves. And really, at this point, it's really unclear what they're going to do. But this most recent article here that I want to show you kind of shows that maybe Rasmus Ristolainen himself actually wants out. Based on comments he's made to a media outlet here, it certainly does seem that way. Let's take a look at the article. Now it says here, the drama surrounding the future of Sabres defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen took another turn when he implied that he is asked to be traded during an interview with Finnish television outlet MTV Sports. According to a translation of the interview, Ristolainen said he wanted to keep the discussions with Sabres management private. Ristolainen's future has been a question, especially as the Sabres have added an abundance of defensemen during this offseason. I cannot say anything other than the fact that on the 12th of September, I will be at one of the NHL's training camps, he said. MTV Sports is the same news outlet that reported months ago that Ristolainen would not be back with the Sabres, though the team would have to make a move for that to be the case. When he met with Buffalo reporters at the end of the season, Ristolainen seemed uncertain on whether he needs a change of scenery or wanted to remain with the Sabres. He's under contract for 3 more years with an annual cap hit of $5.4 million. He also goes on to say that, I haven't been able to win with the team, he told MTV Sports. According to the translation, recent seasons have been tough and I haven't been able to enjoy hockey. This certainly leaves a lot of comments there that would be concerning and that he doesn't want to go back to Buffalo. I can't say with absolute certainty that's the case, but it's probably fair to assume that based on these remarks, and to a degree, kind of sounds relatively close to the remarks that we heard out of the mouth of Ryan O'Reilly this season before, and of course he ended up being traded as well, made it pretty clear that he did not enjoy being in Buffalo, did not enjoy the culture and the team, that losing was really having a major effect on him not loving the game like he used to, and he got shipped over to St. Louis and we've seen what happened there. But could Ristolainen be in a very similar boat here that he kind of wants out of Buffalo, is not enjoying with the direction the team is heading, obviously not real pleased with his own personal development, his personal play, the fact that he hasn't been able to help the team win more and be successful. So do you think it's fair to assume that based on these comments that Rasmus Ristolainen wants out of Buffalo and that maybe all of the talk around him being traded has likely been stemmed from him requesting a trade? It just hasn't been acknowledged publicly either by the player or by the team. But the fact that he's saying that he wants everything to remain private and that the other comments about not enjoying hockey and being frustrated or whatever kind of sound eerily close to what we heard out of Ryan O'Reilly, and to a degree not even all that far off the mark from what remarks Sergei Bobrovsky made to Columbus reporters when last season opened when asked about his future with the team. He wanted to keep everything private, didn't really want to talk about it. It was really very hush-hush over everything. Typically when players want to be part of an organization, they're happy to declare that and make it known publicly, and that's certainly far from the case in this situation. So let me know what you think. Does it sound to you like Rasmus Ristolainen would prefer to be traded out of Buffalo and get a fresh start with another NHL club? So let me know your thoughts on all the discussion points here in today's video. There's all kinds of interesting stories yet to unfold before this offseason comes to a close. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.